Hello everybody, and welcome to another build video. Today we're going to take a look at what I believe is the next new budget king, and I've been pretty impressed what you can do with this board so far. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at what we're going to be building today. Now this board you can get for about $30 USD, and if you go through certain sites and use discount codes, you can get it for as little as about 26 bucks. So it's a pretty amazing deal. It's a 75% keyboard, 75% compact, and this is the Feker, however you want to say that, JJK84. Now, if you've seen other Feker products out there, the IK75 is actually one of the boards that I own and I highly enjoy, and the unboxing experience was pretty amazing. Now, this particular board I was going to do an unboxing on, but as you can see here, it ships in a very basic plain OEM box. We'll go ahead and pop her open and take a look at it. There's no way that this warranted an open boxing or an unboxing. So here you get your standard Eva Foam protector. You get the board here, a little tiny instruction manual, and then when we let this flap up, we get a very cheap generic USB-C cable. So nothing fancy here. So there's really not a whole lot to unbox. So that's why we didn't do much in terms of unboxing. Now, I will go ahead and give a disclaimer that I was kind of excited for this board and I wanted to see what kind of modifications could be done to it, and we'll cover some of those today, and that's what this build stream is about, or this build video is about. And so I have gone ahead and done some mods here to it, which I'll explain in a moment. But when you take it out of the package, this is basically what you're met with. And I think it actually looks pretty good. It's fairly representative of a decent quality board. It's got a battery, a little tiny battery that's under here. It's 200 milliamp hours. There's no foam included in it like you would get inside the IK75. However, it does have included plate foam, so that's pretty nice that you get that. This is a hot swappable north facing board. It's a tray mount board, so you'd see here where the screws would have been placed with the tray mount, and I'll explain more on that here in a moment. The stabilizers are okay-ish. With some tuning, they did come out again okay-ish. Weren't able to wholly mod them because once again these stabilizers come shipped with lubrication on them, and it's very lightly lubed, and you definitely want to pull that apart, wipe it down, and at least re-lube it, so that way you can tune them with injection lubing, some dielectric grease or BDZ to get rid of any tick. But they fit fairly tightly into the housing, so they're okay. So I mean, after a couple days of use with the stock configuration, it seemed to come through okay. Now I want to give a heads up, I do have a thunderstorm rolling in, so I'm going to do my best to get through this and apologize if you hear any background thunder or anything like that. So it is, again, it's a tray mount board. So you can see here, there are locations where it would have been screwed into various standoffs on the board. So what I did, and we'll go ahead and take this guy apart the way it's intended to be taken apart. For the first teardown, I would use a spudger and get in between the two layers, so that way you can pull the top housing off. But I've already done that because I was validating that this would be good for what we're going to do today. So you can just take your nails and kind of pry off the top housing. And this is true in the Feker IK75 as well. There we go. So we got that top off. You can just set that aside. And then again, you would remove those screws. And once you remove those screws, you can then remove the assembly. I've already removed the battery. I don't intend on running this with a battery. And as per usual, you can kind of jiggle it out, or you can use, a spudger and kind of push out on those little tabs. But I will not be using this battery. It is too small to make any difference in the functionality of this board. so I will be holding out until I can get another battery. This board is Bluetooth and wireless enabled, so you do have a little Wi-Fi dongle here, or wireless dongle rather, to connect it to the board wirelessly, or you can use Bluetooth. It has the mode switcher right here that you see on a lot of budget boards when you're switching between the different modes. Now, to show what I have done, what I have actually done to this was I actually went through very much like I would do in a custom Game Boy, where I am modifying it to be IPS ready. So let's see if I can get this in focus here. So I have removed all the ridging and screw down points and all that, so that way it's no longer tray mount, and I'll explain just in a moment. I would say that it makes it a little bit more flimsy, but honestly, I didn't find much difference. So I don't feel like the ridging really added anything of any worth to it. I don't know if it was done like that for the molding process or what, but what I do is I run a craft knife around the edges, and then I will use a pair of snips to clip the corners, and then followed by a pair of pliers where I'll wiggle it back and forth. And you can see that in one of the Game Boy videos that are currently up. But we do that to remove the plastics, so that way it's nice and flush and that board can float in there if we want. Now the reason why we're doing that is because in this particular configuration, we're going to be using a jelly O-ring. So these are what are normally used to do modified tofus, or in some of your like mid-tier boards or entry high-end boards, you'll use an O-ring like this to create a dampening layer as well as create that friction layer, and it also allows a little bit of bounce. Now this is not going to be like what you experience in a like a tofu or something like that, because there are no cutouts in the board for it to bounce. We're solely doing this to give a little bit of flex to the board so it can kind of bounce and float, but also to give a little bit better sound profile. So we'll be using that. Additionally, we're going to be using some Eva Foam. So this is a piece that I cut out and is ready to go in here. Now it just kind of floats over top of the feet. So that's another benefit of this case, is it has the built-in feet. It has two different layers, which is kind of nice, so you can have different typing angles. So we'll be using Eva Foam in the bottom of it as some case dampening. I kind of wanted to use some Mojin cotton or something like that as an additional dampener, and we'll see how that is. I used this particular sheet when I cut it. I did some testing to make sure it would be sufficient, and I was pretty happy with the sound profile. So we're going to be using that. So O-ring around we're going to put it around the PCB. Now we can't do that yet because we have to put some corner switches in, otherwise it sucks up that it sucks up the EVA sheet here and kind of squishes it in. So we need to get the corner pieces put in first. So let's set this aside for just a second, and let's take a look at the switches that we're going to be using. So these switches are they were originally Pro Yellow switches, so Gateron Pro. So they were, here we go, see if we can get something in focus here. So these were Gateron Pro Milky Yellows, and what I did was I swapped in Kailh Pro Burgundy stems, so that way you get that nice poppiness. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but that's what we're aiming for with this build, is to kind of have, we're trying to really pronounce that, like that medium clackiness, if you will, of the milky top and bottom housings. So I lubed and filmed these, so they're nice and smooth. I did break them a little bit after that to make sure that the lube is dispersed evenly, and was pretty happy with that experience. We're also going to use that included PE sheet, and we're going to use that underneath our switches. So I'm kind of excited to try that out. And then we're going to be using these keycaps. So these are just some basic Gliging keycaps. You can get them from various resellers. I always recommend them as a budget keycap if you're looking for something affordable, because they are fairly good quality, and I'll show that here in a moment. but they are fairly good quality. And this kitting is pretty awesome. You get a bunch of different spacebar sizes. You get some fairly decent legends. These are the white on black. And then I also have a kit of the black on white, and I mix those together to create kind of like an Oreo theme, if you will. So these are pretty nice. The legends are pretty nice. Let me see if I can get you here. So I was very happy with the legends. I thought they were great. And you can see here, they are pretty much double shot all the way down to the bottom. So really, really good quality keycap for if you wanted to pick up the black on white right now, you can pick those up on Amazon US from a vendor for about $21. So it's a really good buy. So that's what we'll be using here. We'll be using a blend of the white on black and the black on white. And I think it looks pretty cool. So let's go ahead and set some of this to the side and get started on our PE sheet. And in order to do that, we're gonna need our handy dandy screwdriver. And we're just using a PH1, so it's a Phillips 1 bit from this kit. And there are 4 screws on this particular board. So you've got, get her in focus again. My focus range is bunk today. There we go. So you got one there, one here, one over on this side here, and then one more here. It's actually really easy to take apart. So let's get these out. All right, here's the last one, and I want to show here. There we go. So I also used a little O-ring on these just to add additional dampening, just in case. I didn't really notice any kind of rattle or anything like that between the plate and the PCB, but it's there as good measure. Okay, so we remove our top plate and our foam, and this is just, again, it's EVA foam. Let's see here, this particular EVA foam is 3.3 millimeters, so about 3.5 millimeters when it was uncompressed. And then the sheet that we typically use, I believe, is a 2 millimeter. Yeah, so it's approximately 2 millimeters for what we use for case filler. And you can buy those from your crafting supply store or whatever. All right, so we've got our board here. Set our PE sheet right on top, like that. And I think I've got a couple different ways that I like to do this, but I don't know. I think I'm just going to put this back on and screw it back together, and then we'll trim around the board itself. Okay, so there we go. PE foam sheets are in, and then I'll take my little filing set here where I keep my knife. I'll take the craft knife out. And I'll just poke a little hole here. And we'll just Go down it nice and slow. And I'll be right back. I'm actually going to get something to cut safely on so we don't ruin the desk mat here. Alright, so we're back with got our handy dandy cutting mat here, and that way we don't risk damaging our board. So I'm just going along the edge of the PCB here, and we're using the plate. It's a nice thick steel plate. We're using that as kind of a reference guide. Okay, not too shabby. All right, so now we've got our stabilizers that we got to worry about. So let me get a pair of tweezers here, and we'll pull our stabs out. And what I like to do is we just reference where the stab holes are, and we're going to cut either side. You got to be careful with this too, because you are cutting against the PCB. But we'll cut either side and just kind of score a little bit. And then we'll remove this section here, this little piece here, and just kind of tore that, so you got to be careful. But we remove the little piece that is above the stabilizer hole. That way the stem can just hammer down where it needs to. So let me go ahead and finish doing that to all these. Alright, so we got that done. That was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. And I think it is because of the fact that there's already lube on the board, so it was absorbing into the PE foam. So now we're going to, let's go ahead and punch some of these switches into the corners. Make sure it's lined up nice and straight, and then make sure your foam is nice and straight, and that should punch right in. Always support those hot swap sockets. And I'm going to take this switch out because I think I smushed it. No, it went in. Okay, everything was good there. Okay, and then we take our O-ring, and I'll put a link to Graveshift where I get these O-rings at. Several different sizes that you can get. This is actually one that I had used on a 60%, so there is some flexibility there. We take that O-ring, and we just kind of go around the board with it, and then I like to kind of pull on the ends here. Just kind of get that evenly spread out. So let's go ahead and go through the board and put our switches on, and then we'll load it up inside the case. there we go. All the switches are in. Let's go ahead and get rid of this guy. And okay, so we'll start assembling. Now again, we've got our other EVA foam sheet. It's about 2 millimeters thick. Cut out a spot for the switch. It's just big enough to fit down in here. I have removed the battery. And again, there is lube all over these little pieces that I pulled out for the stabilizers, and it is just sticking to everything. So, a couple of rules of thumb here with this. Probably a good idea to make sure all your switches are nice and seated properly. So we see we've got an issue right here where the foam has come up. What I should have done is waited to put this on until we had all of our switches in. So let's go through and just make sure all of our switch foam is out where it needs to be. So we've got a little bit of a problem here, and I don't know what's causing it, because the PE foam shouldn't have caused that, but it's got a little bit of a weird board flex going on. I think that has to do with the foam getting all wonked up. As you can see here, those switches are not wanting to go in and stay in. And again, this is just creating a dampening layer for us. So you've got your USB port here. You want to drop that in and make sure you do it at an angle. And you make sure your USB port is lined up. And then you're just going to have to kind of, once you get it lined up, you just kind of get it squished in. And once you've got your gasket set there, I take a pair of tweezers here. I'll cut back to this in a minute. Definitely having some problems with the PCB this time. Okay, so once you've got this top part lined up, then we've got to go through down here on the bottom, and because it's a little bit tight, I use these tweezers to kind of just roll that O-ring down into this little opening here. Okay, so it's going to fit substantially looser than what you would expect in a gasket mount, but that's where the tray top comes in. So we're going to line up our opening cutout and just snap everything back in place, and that sits on top of the O-ring, and then the bottom of the O-ring sits on the bottom housing. So there you go. Okay, so we got that done. Let us go ahead. I'm going to steal this and I'm going to go test it. I'm going to go test it and make sure that all the switches are working, because it doesn't feel exactly right at all. And then we'll revisit it. Be right back. All right, that took a minute. I implore you, if you're going to do this, take your time. And probably do the O-ring last. I had about 7 or 8, maybe 9 switches that the pins were bent on, and an easy fix, but you know, that's a couple minutes that I lost there. So in a hurry to try to beat the storm that's coming in, I made some goofs. So that's all been fixed. All the keys are registering now. So let's go ahead and put some keycaps on. There we go. This sounds wonderful, and I haven't even done a typing test yet. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Let's do typing test. 3, 2, 1. All right, there you go. That's your typing test. I'm speechless. If you're going for a clackboard, this is beautiful. So to give you a rundown, again, you're getting a 75% compact keyboard in the Feker JJK84, whatever. You can buy it off Epomaker. You can use a discount code, and you can get it for about 26 bucks. Plus any shipping or what have you. You can also get this off Amazon for about $30. Your keycaps, if you get the black on white, you can find for $20, $25. The white on black, upwards of $30. But let's say you go with the black on white, you're looking at $30 board, $21 set of keycaps. That is $51. And then if you were to go with Milky Yellow switches, you'd be looking at about another $24, so you're coming in around $75. That's pretty decent. Now, if you take the mods and you go the route that I did, requires a little bit of time to remove the material, an extra couple cents worth of Eva Foam, and then the O-ring will cost you about $10 shipped US. So, I mean, for under $100 with fully modded, or around $70 stock with the tray mount, that's a pretty dang good deal for a sound like this. Of course, this is more pronounced with the long poles of the Kailh's stems, but this sounds and feels pretty amazing. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comments what you thought of this. Do you think this is kind of the new budget king? I mean, a $30 70% board. I do need to mention a couple things about it. It does not have RGB. It is only white backlit. So that is kind of the only bummer about it. And that battery is pretty small. But aside from those two minor nitpicky things, I think this is pretty stellar. In fact, let me grab a cable here and plug it in for you. I need to get a longer cable over here, but if you look here, with all these lights on, it's hard to tell. Let's get these lights off. But it's got a pretty decent backlight to it. Pretty nice. But anyway, let me know in the comments if you like this board, if you would buy this board. Let me know if you have anything that's cheaper and that offers the same level of value that these Feker boards offer. And I would be happy to take a look at those, but this is pretty amazing. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think, any other suggestions or recommendations that you have, and anything that you guys would like to see on this channel. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me, hanging out with my chill builds and making boards and the occasional classic handheld or something like that. So thanks so much for sticking with me, and until next time, y'all have a good one.